Welcome, everyone. And to many of you, maybe to your first Aspen roundtable. This looks more like a scene from Oliver, where we're all eating at long tables, but we're going to have a great roundtable, and I appreciate deeply everyone being here. I'm Lisa Mensah. I'm the Executive Director of the Aspen Institute Initiative on Financial Security, and I'm really delighted to welcome you here today. Many of you are longtime friends of Aspen and the Initiative on Financial Security, and we've tortured you at many events before. Others are new, and we're so glad you braved it and are here with us today. We're really honored that we've set a table today with so many people to discuss this powerful issue of savings to last a lifetime. So my job, while you keep munching, this is the time that I fill time, so you can all chew and unwrap everything. And so my job is to set the stage a little bit for today's discussion. First, let me tell you a little bit about us. As many of you know, the Aspen Initiative on Financial Security has been working for 7 years, and we've devoted ourselves to examining ways to improve financial security in America. And by this we mean improving financial security for people of all incomes, even the most modest, and for people of all ages, and for people with and without access to employer plans, but about people who need more savings. Savings for going to college, savings for buying a home, savings for retirement, and also for people needing to turn retirement nest eggs into something that will last. And that's really our topic today. So we've embraced a number of policy proposals that speak to improvements in lifelong financial security. And some of those have been aimed at improving employer plans. Some of those have been aimed at enhancing savings for those not in employer plans. And some have been aimed at starting savings at the earliest possible point. Many of you know our child account proposal, rather than waiting until you get a full-time job with an employer plan. And some are aimed at stretching nest eggs to last a lifetime. And it's this latter component, seeing savings last a lifetime, that brings us here today. We tackled this issue several years ago with our Savings for Life recommendations, but recently it's become increasingly complex and also increasingly important. We're all familiar with several shifts. There's a familiar shift in coverage from primarily a defined defined benefit system to a defined contribution shift. And we're even aware that even for those Americans who still enjoy defined benefit plans, many are opting to take lump sums when they reach retirement. What's becoming clear is that knowing how to explore the choices available for that lump sum when you reach retirement is, well, it may well be one of the biggest financial decisions workers and savers and families will ever make. And when the economy is rocky, it's really an increasingly difficult decision to know what to do. And it can feel quite paralyzing to employers and workers alike. So, no surprise that we find policy leaders in this administration tackling this tough topic. And we're honored to have two of them with us today. One of them will be here soon. But Michael Davis is here of the Department of Labor, and Mark Every will soon join us from the Treasury. Many policy leaders in Congress are also closely examining the issues and options that surround this issue. And we're honored to have today staff from the tax and labor and aging committees here with us today. I see many folks sneaking in, so shout it out. This is by way of introducing you all, by the way. We're not going to go around and introduce ourselves, so I'm going to kind of point out who's here. So we really have a wealth of talent and expertise from the private sector. And if you weren't wowed by this expert discussant list, you should be. We really have major players in the financial services industry. We have real leaders from the consumer perspective and the saver perspective. We have creative voices at other think tanks, and all of these are folks that we welcome. You know, it's a goal of the Aspen tables to really have a cross-sectoral dialogue and to not just speak with one voice or from one perspective and to come at an issue from all sides. And it's our delight when this is possible because you all come. People have been asking, what's an expert discussant? You are the expert discussants, and our job today is to dig into this issue with all of your voices. Before we dig in, I want to make sure I introduce my team. If you guys would just shout a hello. First of all, my senior consultants, Leslie Kramerich and Lou Mandel. Lou, where are you? Thank you, Leslie and Lou. Lou got a plane and came from Seattle. Senior Associate Raymond O'Mara. Colby Farmer, I don't know, Colby may be waiting for Mark, and Pamela Hall. But for us, this is one more step. This discussion today is one more step in an ongoing stream of work that we started thanks to the Atlantic and Rockefeller Foundations last year. And many of you were with us last fall where we took a 2-day offsite for a set of intensive discussions on many moving parts that are really part of this issue of stretching our savings. And at the end of that, we decided at the conclusion of that session that we would tackle a couple of things. First of all, we thought we would dig into the issue of what do consumers need to know? And we want to be responsible for producing a consumer pamphlet, a general introductory tool that will help lay out a constructive approach to the task of exploring options for lifetime income products that participants in 401k plans might find helpful, and that perhaps the DOL might find worthy of sharing with them. The other deliverable would be a deeper study, a deeper look on the perceptions of risk that are held both by consumers and by investors. And this perceptions of risk study will also consider the market-based solutions that can address perceptions and misperceptions of risk, and we'll also look at the policy-based solutions. So these are two ideas, a consumer pamphlet and a risk study that we'll be working on, and many of the ideas that we generate today we hope will contribute to those efforts. And we look forward to, we've got your emails now, so we look forward to pursuing you in the future as we try to go deeper into those projects. So let me tell you about the sequence of today's discussion. After my remarks, I'm going to ask Cathy Weatherford to say a few words. As you know, Cathy's the president of the Insured Retirement Institute, and this is the National Retirement Planning Week that IRI has launched, and we're proud partners in that, as many of you are. We're the seminal concluding round-out event for the week, Cathy, so we are very pleased to round it up for you. And
taking us to the finish line.
This will be a great finish, I think. I think you've put everybody with us in this room that could think about retirement planning and what it's really going to take us as a country to do this well and to do this better. Cathy and her colleagues have been rolling out new research on consumer needs, new tools for addressing disclosure challenges and specifics on the issue of managing perceived risks. So she's got lots to say, and I want her to say a few words. Then I want to move quickly to some comments from our guests from the Treasury and Labor Departments. And after that, we'll open up our discussion to really all of you. We have so many valuable perspectives on this. Our sort of anchors for getting us through is we're going to look really at what consumers need in this question of savings to last a lifetime. We're going to look deeply in what does the market have to offer. And if this room can't answer that, I don't know who can. And then finally, we're going to look at what policy changes are needed in order for consumers and market players to look best. I see my friend Gene Sterling walking in, and Gene says, Lisa, is this one of those tables that you just ask a bunch of questions and we all respond? And I did confess that is sort of the tradition of Roundtable. But what I'm hoping is that what will evolve in our time together is a real rich discussion about this deeper probe on savings to last a lifetime. I'm going to be assisted in, we talk about roundtables as jazz, and I have a great artiste with me, my associate Raymond O'Mara, and Raymond will be also navigating the discussion. I can tell you that the mics are a little temperamental. speak, make sure the green button is on, and we'll so we're thrilled Mark has joined us. But let me just turn it over to Cathy. And Cathy, have you make a few remarks about the week, and then we'll get Mark and Michael in on this conversation.
I think you may have to hit your button. Well, thank you again. Thank you very much for this event today and for bringing us to the finish line of our week of National Retirement Planning Week. We kicked off the week with 15 coalition partners, and many of you are around the table, and we are appreciative of your work and effort. But we had dozens of, from the coalition, we had dozens of their members also participating at another level, directly pushing out information about retirement planning to financial advisors, to consumers. So we feel very good that we had a great launch this week, and we hope to grow that coalition and grow our voice next year and every year going forward with this week. We kicked off on Monday with eBree President and CEO Dallas Salisbury. He hosted a consumer retirement readiness webinar, and we had over 300 participants, the majority of those being financial advisors who work directly with clients. And the research they presented revealed that half of all workers cite low confidence in having enough money to live comfortably throughout their retirement years. And a majority of workers are saving money for retirement, about 68%, but 46% of those say that they have less than $10,000 in savings and investments for their retirements. So he got tremendous Q&A throughout the webinar, so we felt good about that. On Tuesday, we headed up to New York City, and we hosted a very successful education media panel forum, and we had over 20 financial reporters in attendance there. The panelists were insurers, broker-dealers, and financial advisors who discussed with reporters how risks are managed within a retirement portfolio and how it is that lifetime income can mitigate those risks in retirement. We also unveiled our own proprietary research there and consumer research, where we found that more than 1/3 of pre-retirees do not know at what age they even think that they might retire. 3 out of 10 boomers cited concern about having sufficient assets as their top issue, while over a half said that they will work for their income in retirement, meaning that I guess they're not actually retired. But for us, as the Insured Retirement Institute, boomers who owned insurance retirement products in their retirement portfolios told us 92% of them said that they believed that they were doing a good job of retirement planning while having that lifetime income piece in their retirement portfolio. Wednesday, we hosted a practice management webinar for financial advisors who do retirement planning. And 7 in 10 advisors told us that they had increases in their clients who were asking for retirement income over the past year. So I think that we're very bullish on financial advice and retirement planning advice as we move forward. On Wednesday, we hosted another practice management webinar for that advisor. We had over 200 financial professionals there. And yesterday, we put out an 8-point plan for lifelong financial health and sent that out to tens of thousands of people, and we had over 1,000 downloads within a few hours of that launch. Our coalition partners have done yeoman's work this week. They've done research, they've done op-eds, videos, banner ads on websites, put out information, have done press interviews, have done many things. Social media was going on among all of our coalition partners all week. We saw a lot of press releases, statements, and activities in their own roundtables and around increasing consumer education around retirement planning. So it's been a very fruitful first week. And lastly, I would just say the United States government sent me a very nice but small refund check for from my taxes, and I received information in my refund around financial literacy and financial planning. So thank you to the United States government for your voice to the American people. With that, I'll close and say thank you once again to our coalition partners. Thank you for everyone for being here today. If you're not a member of the coalition, please let us know. We want to grow this. We want this to be a loud voice for expansion of retirement preparedness and financial security and retirement for every American. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kathy. So, Mark, on tax day, we have to give the honor to you to go first. And I will give the mic.
Thank you, Lisa. It's great to be here. Thanks to Aspen Institute's Initiative on Financial Security, you as well as Raymond and your colleagues for sponsoring this forum and for everything you do to support thoughtful, creative, and well-informed discussion and thinking about solutions to these problems of retirement security, economic security, and for bringing together stellar groups of thought leaders and policy thinkers and advocates such as the group here today. The U.S. government indeed and this administration in particular are very supportive, as you know, of the need to improve retirement security, not only by Cathy providing you your refund in an expeditious way and including in it appropriate information, but in a whole variety of ways. The perception that we have shifted from a DB to a DC system is, of course, a pretty shop-worn truism in our world, and like many other truisms, there's some basic truth to it, of course, a lot of basic truth, but it represents only one way of viewing things, and as it's repeated constantly over the years, it may actually be obscuring as much as it reveals. In thinking about what our retirement security and retirement savings policies ought to be, would it be more useful for us to more quickly move beyond the labels DB and DC, beyond the question of how many plans there are of various types, to focus on the desired outcomes and specific objectives? Where do we want to go? How do we want to get there? And on the specific attributes of both the plan designs and the behavior of savers or potential savers, including whether everyone's included, whether the most vulnerable among us, and whether the middle-income families who make up the majority of us are creating or getting sufficient retirement security and opportunity. The shift, in a sense, has been from a strong balance and combination of collective sharing of financial risks, adequate protections on the one hand, combined and balanced with individual choice and opportunity for growth on the other hand. Whether there's been an actual shift or whether it's to some degree our tendency to think in mythical terms, nostalgically about the past, it's clear that I think we want to move to a robust balance of that sort of combination. The emphasis, the way we often talk about it, has shifted from collective sharing of risk and of management functions with respect to savings to individual choice and individual risk management, corresponding to a contrast between the traditional old-style employer role in providing pensions, in the sense of arrangements funded mostly by the employer, investments managed by the employer or its appointed fiduciaries, and paid out as lifetime income in retirement, as opposed to contribution and saving decisions that are made mostly by individuals, typically by electing whether to make salary deferral, 401k type contributions, individuals controlling investment decisions and managing payouts and assets in retirement, more of a do-it-yourself approach. And my question is whether we can't move to a strong, healthy, and sensible combination of the two approaches, not denigrating one or the other, but combining the collective risk sharing and secure protections with the flexible individual choice and opportunities for growth. And while we do that, that kind of balanced combination needs to include the most vulnerable, needs to include the middle class in order to not only allocate benefits in an equitable way and give the taxpayers a good return on their investment through the tax preferences that we give here, but also in order to promote, as Bill Gale and his co-authors have pointed out, saving that actually helps add to national productivity, add to investment, build the GDP, rather than simply shifting assets from one pocket to another. When we target the incentives to the moderate, middle income, and lower income people, we tend to have more assurance that saving, net saving rather than shifting, is likely to result. The risks that we're talking about managing, the risk of not saving at all, not accumulating enough. The old style pension took care of that. The employer did it, the employer contributed. We need to find automatic enrollment, behavioral strategies, other ways of addressing that, including perhaps more defined contribution employer funded plans, non-matching as well as employer matching contributions. The risk of not preserving what's contributed until it's needed and through the retirement period, through investment losses, inflation, leakage, excessive fees and expenses, the risk of unpredictable events that prevent accumulation, like losing one's job or disability, that cut off the ability to accumulate more in many cases, and even counterparty risk, the risk that an employer or a financial institution or someone else who promised a benefit or contracted to provide a benefit is unable or unwilling to do that. And finally, the risk that I think you're focusing principally on today of suboptimal management of one's savings that have been accumulated or accrued, or the benefits that have been acquired because of the challenge that an individual naturally confronts when trying to plan successfully, particularly to manage the risk of outliving one's assets. To deal with the risk of not contributing, of not funding, we try to encourage plans to be formed, share benefits broadly, cover the half of the population that doesn't have employers that are willing to sponsor plans. And here, the administration's been strongly espousing and supporting the approaches like the coverage expansion through automatic IRAs developed under the Retirement Security Project auspices, which would take important steps toward addressing this lack of coverage for almost half the workforce. And other initiatives have been proposed that are promising, including the expansion of the Savers Tax Credit that is targeted to moderate and lower income people, about 6 million of whom use it now, but tens of millions could use it if it were refundable, if it were expanded in accordance with its original design at the beginning of the legislative process a decade ago. And there are other measures that could help. Given today's focus on the longevity risk, let me just say a few words about that. The administration, my colleague Michael Davis is here from the Labor Department, Labor and Treasury have joined forces to try to expand a national conversation on lifetime income, the importance of providing options for folks that are attractive and realistic and effective to convert account balances or lump sums into income. Not trying to force everyone to annuitize, not trying to favor one type of product or industry over another, but trying to restore the sense that our system is a pension system. Our private pension system has something to do with replacing that paycheck, a pension paycheck, a retirement income stream, and helping to get the system back to something that offers that as much more of a salient alternative for people who are interested in it. The attention that financial planners give to annuity or income options has increased recently by at least anecdotal evidence, and I think what so many of us are hearing. The attention that employers, plan sponsors are giving to this is beginning to increase, although it's not where we'd like it to be. And we know that there are lots of obstacles and challenges, but the private sector is being quite creative in trying to address those and coming up with solutions. And we at Treasury and Labor, the rest of the administration, hope to be a part of that process of helping the system along to better and more attractive options of that kind. One of the challenges is the all or nothing kind of approach that plans have often presented to the individual when they frame the choice of how to take one's benefit. Not necessarily because the plan doesn't want to encourage lifetime income, but because it hasn't always been a priority in many 401ks and indeed nowadays in many defined benefit plans as well. When it's an all or nothing choice, do you want an annuity or do you want a lump sum? Oh, and if it's an annuity, you can get a 50% joint survivor, 100% or 75%. Maybe there's a 10 or 20 year certain and continuous option in addition to a single life. But it's not as often as one might expect framed as a question, how much of your benefit do you want in the form of income? Income for life or for a very long time on a regular basis, and how much do you want as flexible assets? When it's all or nothing, and when it's a now or never choice, you've reached retirement age, this is the time, here's this annuity, we've been telling you have an account balance for the last 40 years. That sounds a lot like a lump sum about to be paid out, but now we're reminding you that you could take it as a stream of income. And that's true not only in 401ks, but in a cash balance plan where the account balance is being used as a tangible representation of the benefit. We may have failed in framing the benefit and in encouraging people to think in terms of pension paycheck, replacement of income that they had when they were active. And so I know we at Treasury and Labor have been thinking about all the comments we've received from this request for information and the hearing we had to follow up, many of which have struck this theme, have sounded the theme of all or nothing isn't necessarily the best way. Partial is partial annuity, whether it's some of your benefit in an annuity and some in flexible assets, or whether it's starting to annuitize, to accumulate deferred annuity units over time, the gradual process of an in-plan annuity, or whether it's taking part of your account balance and buying something like a longevity insurance product where you're taking part of the annuity or all of the annuity at a later point in time. All of these are intriguing options. There are various other ones, and very much looking forward to your ideas and productive conversation on this. Lisa?
Great. Michael, can we have you share a few remarks teed up here?
Hello, Michael Davis. Very happy to be here, to be surrounded by such an august group of very smart people that are going to help us think this problem through. We don't profess to have cornered the market on all of the new ideas in government. We recognize that something like this is going to require all of us in our best thinking to solve this problem. But we do think that the issue of lifetime income is going to be a defining issue for us at the department during our time here. There is obviously a much greater number of people who are going to be eligible to retire in the next coming years as the baby boomers start to retire. I had the folks on my staff just run some quick numbers. They pulled some numbers from the Social Security website. 2015, Social Security projects the population of Americans aged 65 years and older will be 47.1 million. By 2025, that number rises to roughly about 64 million people. That is a very large number. Those people will need to think very clearly about how to manage their retirement as people's longevity increases. So adequacy is going to be a very big secular issue for all of us to think through. And it's something that we're giving a lot of thought to at the Department of Labor. I want to give a lot of kudos to Aspen for convening this group and all the work they've done in this area. They've been thinking about this for quite some time. We look forward to leveraging the insights that they have developed. And also thanks to Lisa, it is no small effort to pull together something like this. And the phone calls I know she has to make to get all the people here and on time is no small feat. So kudos to her and her staff. So Mark mentioned that Labor and Treasury are working together on this project. This is a joint project, and we have been working quite a bit together on it, starting with an RFI that we issued several months ago. Had a number of questions that we asked the marketplace about with respect to what's going on in the marketplace around lifetime income. What are some of the barriers that employers experience with respect to offering lifetime income products on their platform? When those products are offered, are people using those products? And what can the departments do to be helpful in this process? And again, I can't emphasize enough the need to be helpful. We do not want to inhibit innovation and creativity, and we want to leverage it and find ways to expand it so more people are able to take advantage of these options. So we issued an RFI several months ago. We received about 800 comments. Those of you who are not following these kinds of things with the department and RFIs, 800 comments is a lot of comments to get on one effort. For instance, we have a proposed reg on definition of fiduciary. That's a reg that has elicited a lot of passion. For that one, we've gotten roughly over 200 comments by comparison. We got 800 here. I will say that several of those comments were, some had to be redacted. There were just outright threats we had to notify security about because for some reason the narrative got created that what the government is actually up to is we are going to take retirement assets and use those assets to pay down the federal deficit. So people wrote in saying, keep your hands off my money. I can assure you that that is not what we are planning to do. And I can speak for Labor and Treasury, I think.
You don't just think.
Yeah, absolutely not. So that was quite interesting. It certainly is not the narrative that we expected to see around this initiative. But we did get a lot of great comments. And after that, we actually had a hearing back in September. We had about 45 witnesses that shared a lot of great insights with us about what's going on in the marketplace. And there are a number of themes that came out of it. I will share with you one of the interesting testimonies we received from a person. He's an academic, and they have a behavioral institute. And one of the things he said they were experimenting with was taking pictures of current participants using computer technology to age those participants and showing the aged photo on the balance statement, your 401k statement, as a way to focus the mind. Now, you know, I don't want to see my photo now. So to see it 20 years from now, I really, I don't know if that would motivate me or not, but it was something they were experimenting with because there are different emotional triggers that motivate people to act. And one of the things we're giving a lot of thought to is, you know, we don't like unintended consequences. So to the extent we do something in this space, we don't want to do anything that creates the opposite impact of what we're actually trying to do, which takes you into the field of behavioral economics, because you really want to understand how these things are going to land for people when we do what we're going to do. And make sure they land the right way for the right populations, because as you guys know, different age groups may think very differently about their retirement. People who are nearing retirement think one way about it. People who are in their 20s and 30s may think very differently. So to the extent the government is going to get involved from a regulatory standpoint, again, we want to make sure that we do the right thing. So we're giving a lot of thought to the comments we received. One of the things I do want to do before I move forward is I see a lot of faces, friends, both old and new. There's a former colleague here who's going to hate the fact that I'm pointing him out again. But Bob Doyle, who was formerly the head of our regulatory office, who recently left us to join the private sector. We miss his smiling face and his intellect around the table, but it's great to see him here. And he's now part of the extended table of people that we think about, see, and this is, as I said, a very broad table of participants to help us solve this problem. But with respect to the themes that we heard from the hearing and the areas of follow-up that we're focused on right now, first is a pension benefit statement. So there's a lot of conversations about the benefit statement and what people get when they open those 401k statements and what they see. And is there some additive element that the department could create, promulgate around lifetime income? And that would be the translation of the lump sum amount that you see in your 401k statement into a lifetime income equivalent. That is a simple statement. It is a very difficult thing to regulate. And I can tell you firsthand, because we're having lots of conversations about it, and one of the key areas of complexity is how should that translation be calculated? So should it be a current balance translation? So you assume the person is going to retire today, and so you take the current balance and translate that into sort of a lifetime equivalent. Should you project? So if the person's 25, let's see, it's funny because as I'm talking, I see different heads nodding, which is part of our challenge. We love you all, but it's part of our challenge. And there's a lot of passion on both sides of that argument. So with the projected approach, obviously there are a lot more assumptions that need to be embedded in that calculation. So you have to think about things like investment return, what assumed investment return do you put in there? How far forward do you project? The annuity equivalent rate. I mean, it's just a variety of things that have to be thought through, and the contribution rate, which creates a lot more complexity. But again, going back to behavioral economics, there are people on both sides of the table that say, some say if you use a current balance, that the small number that you would get, right? So if you're a young employee, you're brand new, you don't have a lot in your account, that translation at a current balance is very, very small. And there are some that would argue that a small number could be a disincentive to younger employees to actually want to save. And they could say, look, I'm so far away, I'm just going to throw my hands up and give up. Other people say that that's not correct, that the projected amount is actually a much better way to show people a fair representation of what their sort of terminal balance is going to be when they get ready to retire. It's a difficult set of questions, and we heard testimony on both sides of the issue. We're trying to think it through, but the way we have thought about this problem is we're starting with, if you will, the demand side of the equation, right? So part of the testimony we heard at the hearing is that even when employers offer lifetime income options on their platform, the take-up rates tended to be very small. So what we wanted to do is focus on this issue of participants and what is going to trigger in them a greater level of appetite for these types of options. So we are actively involved in that. We hope to be able to issue something by the end of the year, but these are active conversations that are ongoing. I would say to you guys, also, you may or may not know that as an employee of the federal, I was previously in the private sector. I've worked for a large investment firm for 17 years. So I'm new to government. I've been in government for 2 years. But one of the things that I've been very excited about is the TSP. The TSP is a thrift savings plan, which is the 401k equivalent for federal employees. I will tell you, as one who sold 401k plans, it's an extraordinary plan. But one of the things that they started effective January 1, 2011 is they put a lifetime equivalent on your annual statement. And you can't see this because it's kind of small, but you get your
referring to the account balance.
The account balance. This is not Mark's account, by the way. We tried to get him to share that with us, but he refused to do so. This is an example participant that has about $35,000 in their balance. The way that TSP does it, they actually do a current translation. They don't project it on the annual statement. In this case, the person has about $35,000 lump sum. The translation for the annuity would be about $178 per month. Now, I've received a statement like this, as has our colleagues at the department, and I will tell you, it focuses the mind. And it focuses the mind in ways that we would hope would increase deferral rates where deferral rates should increase, right? It's just been very interesting as we're thinking about it as a recipient of this information, what it does for us. And I think there is a view, and we heard this at the hearing, that again, this kind of translation does offer some value, and we're seeing that firsthand. But again, we have to think through, if you're going to promulgate it, exactly how does that look? And I don't have any answers, but we'll issue something hopefully by the end of the year. So that's part one. Part two is education and advice. So a lot of people have talked about the line between investment education and advice. The department has issued regs in this space over the years. One of the biggest was in '91, which basically drew a line between investment education and where you sort of cross the line to sort of give rise to fiduciary obligations. There are a lot of people that said for distribution options, we need more guidance in this space. We need you to help us think through when do we cross that line, because the department talked about it in the context of accumulation, but decumulation is a brand new world. So help us with it. That's something else we're giving thought to, and that will be part two as to what we do in that space. Part three is people wanted more fiduciary guidance with respect to the selection of an annuity provider. And this is a significant issue, right? Because the selection of those providers, some would argue, is different than some of the other service providers. Some would argue it's not. But if you do argue that it's different, what level of guidance, or what type of guidance can the department give with respect to the selection of these providers? Should there be a safe harbor that the department creates around the selection of these providers? That is the last part of what we're doing, but that's something that we've also heard. The other thing we've heard a lot about is just the innovation that's already underway in the marketplace, and there is a tremendous amount of it. We read the papers just like everybody else here. We've also met with a number of people who just have a lot going on in this space. I think there is starting to be a much more concerted belief that offering some sort of product on these platforms is adequate. But again, people are looking for guidance both from a participant standpoint and a fiduciary standpoint as to how they do it. But we are seeing a much bigger level of interest, hue and cry from the marketplace, if you will, around these types of efforts. And we're working our way through all the issues to try to get to a final product. But we do think there's a lot of value. And again, we do think this is an issue of incredible importance to us, certainly the Treasury, and to the administration. I think some of the people from the legislature are going to talk about it, but Congress has also gotten very interested in this issue, and there's been legislation introduced. I'm sure you guys will talk about that later, so I'm not going to steal their thunder. But as I said, this is a very, very big issue that a lot of people are giving a lot of thought to.
Thank you very much. You set us up well. As you heard, we heard Mark and Michael frame so many of the issues that we want to dive in, and I'm going to make sure we're done here. We told you 1:30, maybe we'll sneak to 1:32 or something, but that's going to plunge us into where we need to head next. And you heard Mark say about past problems, the all or nothing choice that we've given consumers. You heard Michael, you echoed your whole demand side challenge that you want to. So I think that's where we want to start today, is with the consumer and with the demand side. And I want to bring Raymond into this, and let's open up our table with some consumer issues.
Sure. As you notice, the mics are a little temperamental, so we do have a floating one if you guys want to jump right in. I have a lot of voices here today, so just catch my eye and I'll try and bring you in. But first, I just want to turn to Cindy and kind of get your thoughts. You've been thinking about this issue for a long time with regards to how the consumers are navigating this marketplace and what some of their fears and anxieties might be in making these types of decisions.
Thanks. I'm going to be really quick because we have to come up with the answer in 38 minutes or something.
Solve the problem in 38.
I'm sure we will. I think, people have all heard this before, but, I think the consumers are desperate I think that they're looking for effective strategies. They don't have many people they can trust, so they're looking for trusted messengers. Ditto to a lot of what Michael and Mark were saying. And the piece that I'd like to add is that it's going to be the women, and we don't want to forget the women. 2/3 of those over age 85, the women. It's been the same thing. I started, I think, so long ago, I don't even want to say how long ago, but working on a project called Pensions Not Posies, so that women would leave their jobs and they'd take a pension and they'd pay attention. And I've gone so far, 360 degrees, anything. If Mark would hand out auto IRAs on the street, I'd be, let's do it, whatever we can do. And we're sort of there. So enough from me. And
Sure. I know that there's a lot of you guys who've heard a lot from the administration and from Cindy, and I want to just kind of open it up to some of the providers and say how, what are some of the innovations that are going on in the marketplace. First, I want to thank John from Nationwide. I think would be a great place to start. I'm not sure if there's a mic nearby, or we can bring that over. Like I said, just try and catch my eye, and we can kind of bring you into this, sort of talk about how some of the innovations that are going on. If you just press the button. There we go.
Promise. There you go. Thank you. Thanks, and we really appreciate the invitation from Nationwide. We have many clients, millions of clients in public plans, like 457 participants in small businesses. We have more small and micro 401k plans than any other company, so there are a lot of participants there. And then we also work very closely with advisors, some of the banks and independent broker-dealer firms and financial planning firms as well, with our annuity products and life products and 401k. So we always have something to do as relates to figuring this out. Where I wanted to go with this was just to say, where innovation meets regulation, that can be very challenging. And Jerry Golden, who's with our Government Affairs Office, I just said to him on the way in, I said, there's so much going on. You need to code your emails to me on what I need to read, what's urgent, and what's really happening, because even the experts are confused right now, so I can't even imagine how the individuals and the participants are. We've done a lot on in-plan type guarantee work that's very creative, both with partners like asset managers as well as our own proprietary products. We've also partnered with broker-dealer firms to integrate onto their platform to provide retirement income right next and integrated into their accumulation type plans. And I say all that because some of the challenges we've been met with are getting the product and the capability actually to the advisor and in the states. So we can have the best idea, the most creative and forward-looking retirement opportunity for Americans. But if we can't get it through and have it actually be offered from the regulatory challenges, then the participants miss out. So we're working very diligently and creatively, and I think it's the creative word that Michael, you had said that really is how we will solve many of these problems and challenges out there.
That's great. Lynne, you had something?
Again, on behalf of ING, thanks for having us today. One of the things I would say that we're seeing, our business spans over both participants at the work site and then also individuals. And one of the things we're seeing emerge is just confusion on how to bring it all together. So about being a whole person. And so our experience is that people end up with buckets of money all over the place. They've got 6 or 8 employers over the course of a career. And so recently we did a survey, and one of the things that people are really looking for, they look to their employer for help with that. But what we see is that our employers as plan sponsors are not necessarily enabling someone to look at their whole life. They're solely focused on what's happening in this particular employment engagement. So one of the things that we're trying to do is to bring our research to our plan sponsors to say, hey, you have an opportunity to be an employer of choice here by creating systems and infrastructures that allows someone to look at whatever they've got going with you today, but then also bring in and aggregate a larger view so that when they set things like their asset allocation, for example, they're doing it across the entire spectrum of savings that are at worksite format or savings that might be in an individual retirement format. And the other thing from a consumer standpoint that we've sort of identified is this paradox that the consumer reports. And I think it's just something that we have to live with, and that's that people want control over their retirement assets, and they want the flexibility, but they also report that they're overwhelmed and they need guidance and advice. And so it's this notion that everyone wants to be treated individually, that they consider their situation to be unique. And I think we have to work really hard, and certainly we're trying to do this, engaging with our plan sponsors to say, how can you create an environment inside the work site where you allow someone to bring who they are in, who they are in a financial sense, so that we can make sure collectively that they're on the right track, at least for the period of time that they're employed with you.
Sure. You want to turn quickly to Melissa Kahn. I think I saw you sneak in here and kind of get MetLife's perspective. So a lot of great topics are going to come back to some of those, but
Thanks, Raymond. I just want to build on what John and Lynn were saying, and I think I speak for most of the providers in this room, and I know we've had many conversations with Mark and Michael and your colleagues. There's a lot of innovation that's going on among all financial providers out there. We're trying to be responsive to what both employers and employees are asking for, but just to sort of to build on this idea of policy meeting innovation, we can only go so far. And just, I agree with everything Lynn said, but taking it from the employer perspective, because we talk to a lot of our customers about this, I mean, anything that you all can do, and particularly at the Labor Department, there's so much concern around fiduciary obligations. But they want to provide education, they want to provide advice, as Lynn was saying, but they're very concerned about going over certain lines. And then in terms of when they do want to offer annuities, how do they select them? So if you can get that guidance out, that would be great. And then on some of these other products, Mark, the tax rules really are a hindrance to things like longevity insurance. So we just need you guys working with us.
I think it's a perfect opportunity to turn it over to Janice. Janice Gregory with NASI. I'm sure this is who we are. She's obviously had time on the ERISA committee at EP, I believe, and now as the president of NASI has a unique perspective on this. And I just want, maybe you could share a little bit about how Americans and the role of Social Security and the potential for maybe delaying Social Security and maximizing those benefits and how that fits into this dialogue.
In terms of, let me make a couple of points, including the delaying. I think it's probably good in this conversation to just review a couple of basics here. The numbers I have are from January 2007, but which produced a Social Security benefit of about 12.5 was about the average then. It's probably a useful yardstick to understand that you would have to have $140,000 to purchase a single life annuity to give you that kind of lifetime income. In 2007, I assume with interest rates so low now, that number is probably higher. You'd have to have $190,000 to get inflation protection, and you'd have to have $225,000 to get $12,500 with joint and survivor annuity protection. So and that is ignoring the fact that throughout your lifetime you've also had disability protection and life insurance protection, each worth about $500,000 each. So that's just to remind us how important this basic benefit is. The rest of it, it just isn't going to get there without the strong base. In terms of, it's interesting in terms of getting people to delay. We have had a turnaround. We had as everybody knows, we've had years and years where people were retiring earlier and earlier, and that did start to turn around in the last decade, which is good news from the standpoint of where we're sitting today. something we did in the 83 amendments that we didn't talk about then very much, and that I don't think, I think we flat out failed to get out there, that's really, really important, is that under the scheme that was set up in the 83 amendments, each year you delay taking your benefit, it goes up now about 8%. Now, I don't know about the rest of you. I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't have a whole lot of other investments out there that are going up 7 and 8%, or at least have been doing that. Which one do you? Is this, okay, or at least have been doing that in recent time. So there's a carrot that's in the law already. And one thing that we can do is, in terms of financial planners and so forth, is make sure that people understand that carrot that's there. Not everybody can delay, obviously, but if you can, it's there. It's inflation indexed. It goes if you live to be 106. And unlike, for example, if you take a pot of money and you just do a 4% rule or whatever, and the required, even if you just did the required minimum distributions go down as you get older. Social Security goes up, so you can start off bigger and you keep right on going. So I think we can help a lot by understanding the carrot for delay that's already in Social Security, and we can do a lot more if we manage not to whack the benefits for our children in terms of ensuring their safety and their security.
I'm curious, is there a different view at the table on the whole question of what consumers need? Is it all about
More sources of guaranteed lifetime income? We need to get egg and dump some new microphones. Somebody, please. So is there any different views here about what consumers need? Congressman Pomeroy.
As in former Congressman Pomeroy, but in any event, I hope this one works better. No?
Nope.
All right. There we go. You know, I say this as a friend of the administration, but we're talking about, okay, we really like expanding participation in the workforce as broadly as we can. We really like some kind of longevity risk sharing, and we like lifelong income assurances. 40 million people have something like that under the PBGC coverage of defined benefit pension. Now, I don't mean to be stuck in 1950 or looking back, but it would be wrong, I think, to just dismiss out of hand the defined benefit format that is existing. Now, earlier in my days, I thought, we got to build this thing out. Okay, I'm pretty pessimistic about that project. But I'm not that pessimistic about keeping them in large measure where they presently are. And I think it ought to be a focus. It's kind of like first do no harm, the Hippocratic Oath for doctors. First to keep defined benefit plans and try to make defined contribution plans act like defined benefit plans. And I'd like to see more from the administration, frankly, on this keep pensions. We got a couple of specific suggestions. One, there's quite a little debate here going on about what is the appropriate reserving level. I mean, what should be the investment posture of public plan funds? There's some are trying to push a notion that basically zero risk reserving is appropriate. I mean, basically means you have to take out of the pension equation investment income. It makes no sense to have assets matched to long-term liabilities deprive of the chance to make investment income. No sense. And so I think that we could have some very useful contribution by the federal government in terms of actuarial analysis about what is safe dimensions of investing by public pension plans before a zero risk, which sounds so good, but zero risk means to me higher taxes, lower benefits. If you want truth in advertising, that's what you ought to call that type of reserving. And we need some dispassionate expertise contributed to that. I'd like to see them do something about that. Secondly, on the PBGC front, well, the administration may or may not agree with zero risk reserving, but it seems like that's how they're investing PBGC, moving down to a sub 30% equity position. The impact on return to the fund, obvious. So at the same time, seeking an automatic opportunity to increase premium on employer. So you reduce your investment income, higher premiums, the result, and that seems to be what the play PBGC is running. Higher premiums are going to further discourage pensions and put tremendous pressure on those that remain. So I'd like to see a full-fledged effort by the administration on preserving where possible public pension funds. I thought pension funds. I think contributions could be made in the public space, at least with information, understanding that these are largely run at the local and state level. And I think that we could look carefully at whether the management of PBGC, some of the decisions being made, are actually disincenting the very pension-type protection that we think is a social good.
Response quick, and then Lenny, I see your.
I'm going to set aside the mic. Congressman Pomeroy, it's always wonderful to hear your input. And, first, I'd like to just say we very much agree with your fundamental point that preserving defined benefit plans is a high priority, and that we should really do our utmost to be sensitive to the threat that defined benefit plans are under, and to nurture and help preserve those plans because they do provide such valuable protections, and so we're very much in sync with that. When it comes to the specifics of what ought to be done on the PBGC front in particular, I don't want to get into that because we only have a few minutes left, but be delighted to continue this dialogue, offline with you and others, and talk about the premium proposals and the investments and so forth.
Good, thanks, Mark.
I think it'd be good to kind of turn it over to Lenny over there from Putnam. You guys are obviously taking this question on from a different angle.
I just wanted to mention our, I don't know if this mic will work.
Hello? I just wanted to mention our experience with with something we call the lifetime income planning tool, because obviously we're supportive of the lifetime income focus that the DOL and Treasury have undertaken. We were one of the people that testified, and we meanwhile proceeded to create for all the plans we administer a new view, so that the first thing the participant sees is not their asset total or some pie chart showing them emerging markets and debt and so on. What they see is something that looks like a paycheck almost. And it's a projection of their future forward retirement income needs. Against that, they can see, first of all, what their contributions currently are creating in terms of filling that goal, what their match from their employer is creating. They can add in Social Security. They can do a few keystrokes and add in other assets, and then they can see if they have a gap. Is there a gap between what they own, where they're headed, and what they'll need? This is a projection. Hello? Michael, it's a projection, so it's looking forward to their retirement age, which, by the way, they control, because the tool has three sliders. The tool has three sliders underneath, which are retirement age, deferral rate, and allocation. And they can move those. So they can change their retirement date that they're aiming at, they can contribute more, and they can change their allocations. And if they go beyond a certain point in equity exposure, their replacement rate goes down, because in our view, it's quite risky to be too exposed. But the only point I wanted to make is the early evidence is that people seeing their future income, if we could put a picture with them, that'd be even better. Seeing their future income, we're seeing something we never thought we'd see in the retirement space, which is impulse savings. they move up. Everybody who visits this tool and plays with it, on balance, they move up a couple of percentage points. I mean, you could spend millions on C&E to try to get the same game-changing impact. That's all I wanted to tell you.
Yeah, can I just ask quick? Can you just talk about the take-up rate for the tool? Are you saying at the
About 30% of participants so far have been going into it, taking a look at it, and of them, the movement is very strong. I'll send you data. It's early days, though, but I would suggest that somebody that sees their lifetime assets as a potential source of income, sees it that way, to the old argument of nudging and framing, they're going to be amenable to the question of buying an annuity or a deferred annuity or a guaranteed drawdown or an income plan, because they would have been thinking about it as a couple clicks away. They can see a total. You've got 210,000 or 85,000, and here's your pie chart. But what they first see, their first frame, is as an income. Very different.
I see Ken. We got a lot of hands coming up. I think Ken and then maybe.
I've never had a problem being heard, so get the microphone. But I wanted to build on Lenny's comments here. Out of our return of confidence survey, we've surveyed for 21 years, we ask individuals, have you tried to figure out how much you need to save for your retirement? And of those who have tried to figure out how much they need to save for their retirement, we find that they are more confident, they will be able to reach their retirement goals. Also, they have more realistic goals of, say, $1 million or more to achieve a happy and successful retirement. So I want to build on the fact that just going through these exercises does have a positive impact. And we also found it leads to other positive behaviors, such as starting to budget, paying down debt, and increasing savings, which Lenny and Tom did his tools.
I'm going to try the microphone, even though I know I can talk really loud. Somebody said that they can't record this without the microphone. I think I've heard a lot of people talking about still trying to get in front of participants about accumulation, and I think some of these tools that we talked about today, those are really great. Still remembering what people had when they had traditional pension plans, they had lifetime income, and they also had a way to lock in. They had a guaranteed pension, and I think what's missing in the 401k model is the fact that everybody's still at risk for sequence of returns, and that education. I like what Nationwide said about trying to educate just broadly in the marketplace, not just about your 401k plan at that employer, but all the different retirement assets that people have, and educating them to the fact that there are ways that you can, when you're 7 years, 5 years, maybe it's at the height of the market, you should be able to take a portion of your retirement assets and put them aside so that at least you've got some diversification in terms of you've locked in at least a base through some type of guaranteed lifetime income product. I think we've all taught, and I was in the 401k business for 26 years, so we taught employees about diversification and asset allocation, and it was a long road to hoe, but we finally did it. I think now we have to kind of re-educate them to the income side of things, or decumulation as some people say, and remember that there's a different type of diversification that has to happen, which is this, the location of your assets, so that they're not all in the 401k plan, they're not all 3 years away from retirement, still at risk to something in the markets that we saw happen in 2007, 2008.
Tom, do you want to jump in?
Sure.
Don't worry about it.
The tools and the emerging technology and the increased access to technology, I think, are all wonderful things, and probably many of us in this room are engaged in some issue. Going back to what was said very early on, Mr. Davis, I would like to see, I think one of the best drivers could be the creation of some type of standard projection. And I almost don't care if it's the projection of your current balance or the current or the projection of a future balance or some assumptions, as long as it's sort of standardized. That would, if everybody always saw it, and it was done the same way. We can all have our own riffs on how you can plan differently and how you can take additional risks. But to drive that awareness into the consumer, into the participants, I think is one of the most powerful things that can increase awareness and in fact change behavior.
Way back. Hopefully that mic will come down to you.
See if this one actually works. One of the things I do want to caution and that I do worry about in providing additional information, whether it's in a standard format, it's just been mentioned, and on the participant statement, we do help a lot of our employers. I work for a consulting firm, and we help our employers come up with these statements, and it's time and it's money. And guess what? That can also be taken out under DOL regulation, under the rules of DOL, from the participant's account. And I do worry about additional requirements stifling some innovation that a lot of the providers have wonderful tools that we just heard about that are already there. I know we provide tools to many of our employers as well, where you can import other income, you can import a spouse, you can import other things in these tools. And I know the Fidelities, everybody else, they have those, and I just worry that if it might be a race to the bottom. And so to try to keep up that innovation, but also get out in front of participants, and there has to be some kind of equilibrium between the two.
I think you raised a great point. Is there another employer voice that might speak to that at the table? I think your concern was, what are we leaving at the employer door that might stifle the innovation?
Yeah, I think that there are a number of things that I think come together on this, but I think that the baseline issue for employers of liability is why having a safe harbor is really critical if we're going to have everybody disclosing it. Now, there are people that are disclosing it now, but not everybody is disclosing it. If there is a safe harbor and you guys are telling us what that safe harbor is, there should be, I'm an actuary. I used to have my own little firm, and there's practically zero cost to putting once you tell me what assumptions to use and how to calculate that, there's practically no cost. And so this argument that there's a lot of cost involved, I think is just absurd. But I would go further and say that the competition, the development of tools that's going on right now among all the people in this room is not going to stop. The competition is not going to go away, and it's the competition and the desire to provide good service that's driving this innovation, and I'm sure that's the case at everybody's firm, consulting and otherwise. And so I just think that's a red herring, and I would really hope that it doesn't cause this effort to stall. The actuary in me feels compelled to say that if these if these disclosures don't recognize the time value of money, that they're very misleading, and that people also need to understand how important it can be to delay retirement. The fact that if you're 25 and have a $25,000 account balance, that's a lot more valuable than if you're 50 and have a $25,000 account balance. And just let's remember these are retirement projections, and let's not treat them like retirement projections. So that's just my 2 cents worth on that count.
Very well done, Judy. I can't push the button. I would just agree with what you said. So the critical part is not working.
How's that? Kudos to Judy. I agree with everything she said. And so the critical part is who's going to assume, you absolutely have to project both future contributions and future earnings. Who is going to project future earnings? That's the key, that employers are loath to step in there and project earnings going forward. the fear that when that number doesn't materialize at retirement, there's going to be problems. Earlier legislation had the Department of Labor projecting that number, and we think that's fine. And we think probably a good place for that kind of calculator would be on the DOL's website that under the Pension Protection Act, we have to send everyone to as part of the quarterly benefit statement. Clearly, we should have other material in there, such as the drawdown product and various other products that are there. But the key, a lot of the models let the participant plug in and assume future earning rate. And of course, you know, that's, so the number is totally dependent on what they plug in. Some providers are doing that, and some plan sponsors are putting that in their system. But the big key is how do we project future earnings, and the future, what the future annuity value is going to be as well.
So we do have folks in the room who are working on this legislation right now on the Lifetime Income Disclosure Act. I thought I saw Derek. One of the things we wanted to get to at this table is what are the policy changes that are needed to help both consumers and providers. And I guess, can I ask you, Derek, to say, what is the utility you're trying to solve for in this act? And what are the downsides you've tried to already to look at on this segment?
Sure. I would say my Senate colleagues, I think there are 3 of us back here.
Sorry, you got the back.
No, we didn't choose. We don't want to sit on the sidelines. We want to be part of the discussion, but there's a chronic lateness. and traffic, so that's what we're sitting on. We're glad to be here. No, I'm here with colleagues who I'm sure you know and who can play an active role in this discussion as well. And I think, really the impetus for this bill was a conversation that my boss, Senator Jeff from New Mexico, had with the Secretary of Opera in New Mexico, who he loves to talk about retirement preparedness. And he spoke to her, and she thought that she had $100,000 in her 401k plan, and she was set. And in the state of New Mexico, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money here in D.C., but his point was, what can we do to start changing that mindset? And I think what we're looking to do is to build off the great, innovations that Social Security had with its benefit statements that we are now told are going to be not sent out because of budget constraints. We're certainly going to be voicing our commission about that. But I think the latest from the TSP is also quite helpful. I can tell you, a number of senators have commented, oh, look what TSP is giving me, because they, just like Michael and Mark and Kara and Michael and I do, and it's great to have that information. But I think really what's been unique about working on this bill is that it's been a real partnership with industry, and we've been able to learn a great deal from employers and from providers about how can this information be delivered. And just to be clear, we, on the legislative front, are not trying to preempt any innovations beyond what the bill discusses. What we are trying to do is to create a safe harbor to give employers the comfort, and what we were trying to just kind of make it as easy as possible in a manner that I think Judy Miller pointed to. So that's what we're trying to solve for. We're trying to solve for the secretary at a law firm who thinks $100,000 is enough to get her through retirement, to be able to add that piece to any other kind of statements that she has. Maybe the Social Security benefit statement will be around to help her in that endeavor. And I think it's probably the first step that Congress is seriously looking at, or at least the Senate is seriously looking at around drawdown. We know you all in industry and academics who focus on, thinkers who focus on retirement have been aware of this change for a long time. But I think that the change has been a little bit slower to notice from Congress, and Michael's boss, Chairman Barkin, convened a really good hearing recently that looks at the very issue. And I think hopefully this is the first step among many to promote lifetime income awareness.
I'm going to try to follow on that comment. There's really 2 discussions going on here that I see mainly taking place. One of them is with respect to whether people are really prepared for retirement in terms of having adequate retirement savings. And the second one is whether they have adequate annuity protection to protect them from longevity. And those 2 often get confounded as being the same discussion. They're actually separate discussions, and there are different solutions to each. The first one, quite honestly, I don't think is solved without just people working longer. I don't think most people are prepared for the fact that they retire at 62 or 63. If they're a couple, one or the other of them is liable today to live to 90, and that number goes up. So 3 decades of support retirement with $100,000 or $200,000 doesn't get you very far, which is what Michael's little annuity projection was showing when he thought, or when somebody thought that $35,000 was going to add up to a lot. And so we really need to make that clear. And I think actually, Lynne, your type of model does that, because you've got built in there not just the portfolio allocation type of thing, you've got built into that what happens if I work another year.
Right.
But there's a separate issue, which is whether you can convert to annuities. And here's a project that I've been working on with NASI and Civic Ventures. And we're trying to figure out how to get it in terms of legislation, but it also came out a little bit in the President's Commission. And this is the great opportunity that Janice was talking about basically getting a higher annuity in Social Security. But most people think that decision, it's partly a very cumbersome way it works. They think that decision is related to whether they work or not, or whether they retire or not. And it's really related now to the way you draw your benefit. And the best example is to give you, not at age 62 where it's really cumbersome, but at age 66, you could effectively, and easily, not easily, but you could convert your 401k to an annuity by simply saying, I'll live off my 401k for $10,000, not take $10,000 of Social Security. That $10,000 of Social Security would then give you $800 every year thereafter, indexed for inflation. So if we can figure out ways to get rid of that cumbersomeness in the Social Security calculation, we can offer ways that people can convert their DCs to a DB, and we can offer planners a way they can actually interact with workers. We have to make it really simple and understandable, because right now it is not understandable to most people. And in fact, the way you'd even have to do it at age 66, that I'll certainly go through, you'd have to like retire for 3 months, or draw your benefit for 3 months, and then not draw it for 9 months, and then draw it for 3 months, and not draw it for 9 months, for instance, if you wanted to convert 1/4 of your Social Security into an annuity. So it's really cumbersome now, and we could really simplify that and really greatly strengthen the annuity protection. That doesn't solve the first problem, which is the labor market problem, and whether we're retiring too long, but it really is something I think that's doable right now.
It's a great idea. Did I say?
Have a quick, burning response, Lynne.
I think this is terrific. I'd like to suggest we have a sequel at some point. I don't think we've resolved all the issues of lifetime income today, but I think I wanted to leave the idea, at least for people to consider, that if we want to crack the annuity puzzle at the national level, if we want to back up the DC system with some kind of lifetime income guarantee, we may well need an entity similar to the PBGC, but for the defined contribution world, some kind of guarantor. My chairman, Bob Reynolds, has sketched this idea out a couple times, even came up with a name for that potential agency, which we named after Lisa Mensah. we called it the Lifetime Income Security Agency. So maybe we could talk a little bit about macro backup to lifetime income at a next event.
You know, many people are right. That said, today we wanted to get to issues of what the consumer perceived and where policy was, and risk is one of our, and perceptions of risk is one of our huge things. We're at 1:30, so we don't have too much time. Do we need an entire new PBGC for any future life? That'll definitely get us all back here for a sequel. But it's bold ideas that drive this city and that we need and are welcome at this stage. We're closing in. I wanted to, we've been working tightly with credentials. Bob Doyle, I'll out you as now a wonderful credential person. I wanted to invite you to have a couple comments before we close here to say your sense of your consumer challenge, some of the things you've heard today, and why we've been interested in this consumer challenge.
This has been an incredible practice. I think we really appreciate Lisa's leadership in this area. We would dialogue and discussion. And quite frankly, I'm very proud to be part of the Department of Treasury's kicking off this initiative. It's absolutely reflecting over many years in the government, is one of the more important there clearly are challenges. There's a lot of innovation, as I seniors as they approach retirement and for security in the lifetime income solutions. And you know, this has been an eye-opener for clearly, as Mark and Michael recognize, there are challenges in terms of the regulations, the regulatory environment keeping pace with a lot of the innovation that's going on in the private sector. And as has been mentioned here, a lot of individuals my age are moving into the retirement, or into retirement. So the timing and the need for solutions and products is here. So there is a timing issue, and there is an imperative. We know there's a demand in the retail space, but that demand needs to be translated into the employer-based system. And in order to do that, we need the regulatory environment to encourage that, foster that, and remove and address perceived impediments to the offering of these income solutions. So with that, I encourage the continued dialogue, and I encourage the work that Mark and Michael are continuing to join them in seeing the updating of our current laws and regulations so that we can move forward.
Before we close, one of our colleagues has been in this town a long time, Steve Bartlett. And earlier, John Carter Nationwide said where innovation and regulation meet is the challenge. And you've seen us in the city meet those challenges before. We've seen this industry rise to the challenge of what consumers need. And I hope we're at one of those points again where we can do this. And I'd love to bring you in before we close.
Well, I would say I'm just amazed at the ambition and the innovation and the companies are doing in the private sector. So this is a combination of supply and demand. I'm one that believes that the demand among Americans for providing for their retirement is quite high. The supply among for-profit competitors is very much there in terms of trying to offer it. I think they often, and it's a subject of another seminar, they often feel limited and stifled by all kinds of regulatory demands and things that they perceive, things that would hold them back, and therein lies the tension. I did a survey before I came of my 100 companies. 98 of those 100 companies see as a major competitive imperative for them today and over the next several years is offering these additional retirement products and capturing that space as a way of moving this forward. So it's quite a strong competitive imperative that then serves everyone, and that's of course what our challenge is to make that work.
Thank you for the real-time survey. It's my job to close this out. I apologize for all of you who didn't get to make your remarks on record on these crummy microphones. But I really thank you for being here. You can tell this is an issue which speaks to one of our deep anxieties and our deepest hopes. And I personally hope that my parents, my generation, and our children will follow us into much more lives of financial security because we're here all pulling at this challenge. So thank you for contributing. We will be continuing. This will not be the Aspen Roundtable on this topic. And when you've given us the next topic, we will come right back and risk the topic in a more serious way. But thank you for giving us your Friday afternoon, your tax day, and really appreciate it.